On April 7, 2009, 23-year-old Charlene Rosemond walked out of her family's home in Everett, Massachusetts, carrying a dream in her pocket, $4,000 in cash for a new car. It was supposed to be an exciting day, a small but meaningful milestone in her life. She got behind the wheel of her father's gray Honda Civic and drove away, her destination unknown. Hours passed, then an entire day. When she didn't return home that evening, her family's concern became alarming. Charlene wasn't the type to disappear without a word. Calls to her phone went unanswered. Messages remained unread. Something wasn't right. For 6 agonizing days, her loved ones searched for any sign of her, clinging to hope while dreading the worst. Then, on April 13, that hope was shattered. Charlene's body was found slumped in the driver's seat of her father's car, parked in an alley behind a convenience store. She had been shot in the head. The dreams she had carried with her that morning were gone, replaced by the brutal reality of an unsolved murder. Who wanted Charlene dead? And why? 15 years have passed, but the questions remain. Her family still searches for answers, for justice, for anything that can explain how a routine day ended in tragedy. Authorities believe she may have been targeted, but no one has ever been arrested. Was it a robbery gone wrong? A planned attack? Or was there someone in her life who knew more than they let on? The puzzle pieces are scattered, and the truth remains out of reach. In April 2009, the city of Everett, Massachusetts, was shaken by the disappearance of 23-year-old Charlene Rosemond. She was young, full of life, and eager to take her next step toward independence. On the morning of April 7, she left home with a plan: she would buy her car. With $4,000 in cash tucked away, she borrowed her father's gray Honda Civic and set off, unaware that this routine decision would mark the last time her family would see her alive. For days, Charlene's loved ones waited anxiously for her to return, their concern growing with each unanswered call. She wasn't someone who just vanished. She was responsible, hardworking, and never missed work without notifying someone. But as hours turned into days, hope started to fade. 6 days after she disappeared, the search came to a devastating end. Charlene's body was discovered in her father's car, abandoned in an alley behind a Somerville convenience store. She had been shot in the head. The money she had carried with her was gone. There were no immediate suspects, no clear answers, just a young life stolen in an act of violence that made no sense. Charlene's murder wasn't just a tragedy, it was a wound that never healed for those who loved her. She had spent years working at a car dealership in Brighton, saving up to buy a vehicle that symbolized her growing independence. Instead, her final moments remained shrouded in uncertainty, her dreams were cut short by a crime that has never been solved. 15 years later, her family is still searching for justice, still seeking the truth about what happened that night. The case remains open, but time has done little to bring clarity. Was Charlene targeted? Did she unknowingly walk into a dangerous situation? Or was it a random act of violence? The police investigation left more questions than answers, and as the years passed, leads grew cold. But for those who knew Charlene, giving up was never an option. Join us as we explore her life, the investigation that followed, and the lingering questions that refuse to fade. Through case files, witness accounts, and expert analysis, we'll retrace the April 7, 2009 events to uncover the truth. Because for Charlene's family, justice is not just a hope, it's a promise. Charlene Rosemond was more than just a name in a police file. She was a daughter, a sister, a friend, a young woman full of life, dreams, and ambitions. Born and raised in Everett, Massachusetts, Charlene grew up in a close-knit Haitian-American family that valued hard work and togetherness. She was the type of person who left an impression on everyone she met. Her laughter was infectious, her energy was boundless, and those who knew her best described her as the kind of person who could brighten even the darkest days. From a young age, Charlene was keenly interested in beauty and cosmetology. She had a natural talent for styling hair and applying makeup, often practicing with friends and family. It wasn't just about looks but about making people feel confident and beautiful. That passion led her to enroll in Somerville High School's vocational cosmetology program, where she honed her skills and graduated with the class of 2004. Her aspirations were clear. She wanted to build a life where she could turn her passion into a career. But Charlene wasn't just about work. She loved to enjoy life. She was the type of person who would spend hours on the phone with friends, sharing stories and laughter. She adored her younger sister, Rose, and was eagerly looking forward to becoming an aunt. The excitement of welcoming a new member into the family gave her something to look forward to. She dreamed of independence, moving into her place, and opening her beauty business one day. She worked at a Toyota dealership in Brighton to take that first step toward independence, saving up for her car, a simple but meaningful milestone in her life. On April 7, 2009, Charlene left home with that goal in mind. She borrowed her father's gray Honda Civic, carrying $4,000 in cash to buy her car. It was supposed to be a day filled with excitement, a step toward her envisioned future. But instead, it became the last time her family ever saw her alive. As the investigation into Charlene's death unfolded, detectives turned their focus toward individuals who might have answers. One name that surfaced early on was Dawkins Joseph, a 21-year-old from Somerville. Less than a month after Charlene was found murdered, Joseph was arrested, not for homicide, but for perjury. According to authorities, Joseph had provided false statements under oath during grand jury proceedings related to Charlene's case. Investigators believed he knew more than he was willing to share. But who was Dawkins Joseph, and how did he fit into this puzzle? Little has been publicly revealed about Joseph's early life or any direct connection he may have had to Charlene. What's clear is that his arrest was a turning point in the investigation. The charges against him suggested that information was being withheld, details that could explain what happened to Charlene that night. But despite his arrest, no one has ever been charged with her murder. Years have passed, and the questions remain. Who was with Charlene in her final hours? Was her death the result of a targeted attack, or did she unknowingly step into a dangerous situation? And if someone out there knows the truth, why have they stayed silent for so long? For Charlene's family, the pain of not knowing is just as heavy as the loss itself. They are left clinging to memories of a young woman full of love, laughter, and dreams that would never come true. The search for justice continues, driven by a single, unshakable truth: Charlene Rosemond deserved more. It was a bright Tuesday morning on April 7, 2009, when Charlene Rosemond left her home, eager to start the day with excitement in her heart. At just 23 years old, Charlene had big dreams about independence and building a future for herself. That day, she had borrowed her father's gray Honda Civic, a car that had become a familiar part of her life. It was a small but significant gesture. Taking her father's car meant she was finally ready to take the next step. She had spent months saving for it, and now, she would buy her very own vehicle, a used Lexus she had found online. For Charlene, it wasn't just about the car. It was about what that purchase represented: a step toward independence, a symbol of her hard work, and a key to her future. Before leaving, Charlene quickly called her mother, something she often did when heading out for the day. Their conversation was brief but filled with warmth. Charlene promised to return the car by 6 or 7 p.m., which seemed routine. She sounded excited about her plans, and there was no hint of anything out of the ordinary. "I'll be back soon, Mom," she said as her mother wished her luck with her car purchase. Little did they know that those words would become one of the last reminders of Charlene's voice, a voice that would never again return to that phone line. Charlene drove off that morning, leaving her family with an ordinary goodbye. She arrived at the Herb Chambers car dealership in Brighton, where she had worked for nearly 4 years. Her colleagues knew her as reliable, hardworking, and always ready with a smile. She was the kind of person who made an impact without even trying, and her day at the dealership went as usual. Charlene was focused on her goal, getting her new car. After finishing her shift, she was set to head out, likely with a sense of excitement bubbling inside her. It was a significant milestone, and it was all within reach. She had worked hard, and now, her dream of owning a car was about to come true. Around 4 p.m., Charlene was seen leaving the dealership, driving her father's car. She was alone, heading toward her next destination. But she never made it. As the hours passed and the sun began to set, the calls from her family started to go unanswered. By 6 p.m., her mother's calls went straight to voicemail. By 7 p.m., the worry began to set in. Charlene was never late. She always kept her promises. The plan had been simple. She would return the car and return home. But the phone line remained silent. The evening wore on, and still, there was no word. Her family's concern deepened with each passing hour. What had happened? Where was she? The excitement of buying a new car had vanished, replaced by an all-consuming dread. Her family contacted her friends, checking if anyone had seen her. No one had. It felt like Charlene had vanished. They didn't know it yet, but the unfolding tragedy would change everything. Charlene Rosemond had entered a nightmare that no one could have imagined. What started as an ordinary day, filled with the promise of a new beginning, quickly turned into a mystery that would leave everyone who loved her searching for answers. The last time anyone saw Charlene was as she left that dealership, unaware that her life was about to be stolen from her in the cruelest of ways. The morning of April 13, 2009, began like any other in Somerville. But as the day wore on, something was about to unfold that would forever change the lives of Charlene Rosemond's family and everyone who knew her. 6 days had passed since Charlene's disappearance, a gap filled with uncertainty, fear, and unanswered questions. Her family had searched, called, and hoped for her return. But all that hope came crashing down when, on that fateful afternoon, a passerby walking down an alley behind an apartment building in Union Square made a discovery that no one was prepared for. At around 6:30 p.m., a gray Honda Civic, the same one Charlene had borrowed from her father, was spotted parked behind the midnight variety store. The car had been there for some time, but its presence seemed ordinary enough at first glance. Yet something about the vehicle stood out in a way that would forever haunt those who saw it. A closer look revealed the lifeless body of Charlene, slumped in the driver's seat. The scene was chilling, her face was still and empty, with no sign of life. A single gunshot wound to her head, executed with ruthless precision, told a horrifying tale. The passerby, shaken and immediately aware that something was wrong, called the authorities. Within minutes, the area was swarmed by investigators, all struggling to process what had just been uncovered. How could this vibrant young woman, full of hope and promise, end up in this desolate spot, cold and lifeless? How could her dreams and future be so suddenly and violently extinguished? There was no sign of struggle, no indication that Charlene had been robbed or attacked in the way most would expect. This wasn't the conclusion of a confrontation, it was the cold, calculated act of someone who knew exactly what they were doing. For Charlene's family, the discovery sent waves of devastation that they could never have anticipated. The phone call to Charlene's mother, Rosemond Jean, was the one no parent should ever have to receive. Rosemond remembered the moment in sharp detail. My mom fell to the floor. My dad ran out of the house. Everyone just started crying. There was no warning, no preparation for the agony of hearing that your beloved daughter, the one you had sent out into the world with the promise of a bright future, had been taken from you in such a brutal, senseless manner. The shock was immeasurable. It was a cruel blow that shattered their world in an instant. Charlene's life had been taken so suddenly and with such finality that nothing could have prepared her family for the weight of the loss. Charlene wasn't just another young woman, she was a daughter, a sister, a friend, a bright, beautiful soul with so much ahead of her. And now, she is gone. The news rippled through the community, leaving a sense of horror. Friends, co-workers, and neighbors could hardly believe it. Charlene was loved by many and known for her kindness, generosity, and spirit. How could anyone bring such harm to her? How could anyone cut her life short so violently? Charlene had been on the cusp of something great, with plans for her future already unfolding. The excitement of her car purchase, a sign of her independence, was supposed to be a celebration, not a symbol of her untimely end. For her family, the days that followed were filled with numb, all-consuming grief. The unanswered questions loomed large, and the void left by Charlene's absence was impossible to ignore. The person responsible for this tragedy had left behind no clues, no motive, nothing to explain why they had chosen to take Charlene's life. The only certainty was the cruel reality that Charlene Rosemond would never have the chance to fulfill the dreams for which she had worked so hard. Charlene's family and the authorities would tirelessly search for answers in the following days and weeks. But despite their best efforts, the truth behind Charlene's murder remained elusive, leaving an agonizing sense of uncertainty hanging over everyone involved. What had happened to Charlene in those 6 missing days? Who could have done this to her, and why? Every lead seemed to fizzle out, every suspect remained out of reach. What was clear, however, was that the grief and pain of this loss would stay with Charlene's family forever. The discovery of Charlene's body marked the beginning of a heartbreaking chapter, one filled with unanswered questions and a desperate search for justice. But it also marked the end of the life of a young woman who had so much left to give, a life taken too soon for reasons that no one could fully comprehend. In the wake of Charlene Rosemond's tragic death, law enforcement agencies launched a comprehensive investigation to uncover the circumstances surrounding her murder. The initial steps involved meticulous interviews with family members, friends, and co-workers to gather insights into Charlene's life, her relationships, and any potential conflicts that might have led to her untimely demise. These interviews aimed to paint a detailed picture of Charlene's daily interactions and to identify any anomalies or concerns that could provide leads. Simultaneously, investigators thoroughly examined the crime scene, the area behind the Midnight Variety Store in Union Square, Somerville. They meticulously analyzed the vehicle, Charlene's father's Honda Civic, searching for physical evidence such as fingerprints, DNA, or any items that could reveal the perpetrator. The goal was to reconstruct the events leading up to Charlene's death and to identify any forensic evidence that could point to a suspect. Despite these concerted efforts, the investigation faced significant challenges. There was a conspicuous lack of immediate leads or witnesses. The crime scene offered few physical clues, and no one had come forward with information about the events of April 7, 2009, the day Charlene disappeared. This dearth of information left investigators grappling with a complex puzzle, each piece seemingly missing and the path to answers obscured. In May 2009, a breakthrough emerged when authorities arrested 21-year-old Dawkins Joseph, a Somerville resident, charging him with 2 counts of perjury in connection with the investigation into Charlene's murder. Joseph was accused of providing false information under oath during the grand jury proceedings, hindering the progress of the investigation. Each perjury charge carried a maximum sentence of 10 years upon conviction, underscoring the seriousness of the offense. Joseph's arrest was significant, as he was considered an important witness. Authorities alleged that he had helpful information regarding the murder but chose to knowingly provide false information under oath. This development raised questions about his potential involvement in the crime and whether he was concealing information that could lead to the identification of the perpetrator. The arrest added a layer of complexity to the investigation, as investigators now had to determine whether Joseph's perjury was an attempt to mislead authorities or if he was protecting someone else. Despite the arrest, the investigation into Charlene's murder continued to face obstacles. Other persons of interest were identified, and various leads were pursued, but none resulted in substantial progress. The community remained on edge, and Charlene's family continued to seek answers, holding on to the hope that justice would eventually prevail. The case highlighted law enforcement's challenges when dealing with perjury and the complexities of uncovering the truth in such sensitive and emotionally charged investigations. As the investigation progressed, the lack of concrete evidence and the scarcity of reliable witnesses underscored the difficulties in solving the case. The community's reluctance to come forward further complicated the efforts to bring closure to Charlene's family. The case remained open, with authorities continuing to appeal to the public for any information that could shed light on the circumstances of Charlene's death. The arrest of Dawkins Joseph, while a significant development, did not provide the closure that Charlene's family desperately sought. The actual circumstances of her death remained a mystery, and the quest for justice continued, driven by the unwavering hope that one day, the truth would emerge and those responsible would be held accountable. The investigation into Charlene Roseman's murder serves as a poignant reminder of the complexities involved in criminal investigations, the impact of perjury on the pursuit of justice, and the enduring pain experienced by families seeking answers in the face of unsolved tragedies. On April 7, 2009, Charlene Roseman set out with a clear purpose: to purchase a car. She had saved $4,000 in cash, a significant sum for a 23-year-old, and was eager to make her dream of owning a vehicle a reality. This substantial amount of money, carried openly, may have made her a target for those with malicious intent. The discovery of Charlene's body in her father's Honda Civic, parked behind an apartment building in Union Square, Somerville, raised immediate suspicions of robbery. The vehicle was undisturbed, with no indication of forced entry or a struggle. However, Charlene had planned to use the $4,000 in cash for the car purchase. This absence suggested that the motive behind her death could have been financial gain. The lack of other valuables taken from the car further pointed to the possibility that the perpetrator was aware of Charlene's intentions. It targeted her specifically for the cash she carried. The theory of robbery as the motive was bolstered by the fact that Charlene had confided in her family about her plans to buy a car and the amount of cash she was carrying. Though shared with trusted individuals, this information could have been overheard or leaked, making her an easy target for someone aware of her intentions. The calculated nature of the crime, with Charlene being lured to a secluded area and then executed, suggested a premeditated act driven by the desire to steal the cash she had on her. While the robbery theory presents a plausible motive, it does not account for the execution-style nature of Charlene's death. The single gunshot wound to her head indicated a targeted attack, suggesting that personal animosity or unresolved conflict could have played a role. Charlene was known to be a vibrant and sociable individual, traits that often attract both positive and negative attention. Investigators explored the possibility that Charlene's death was the result of a personal dispute. They examined her relationships with friends, acquaintances, and co-workers to identify any signs of jealousy, betrayal, or unresolved conflicts that could have escalated to violence. However, no concrete evidence emerged to support this theory. Family members and friends described Charlene as well-liked and had no known enemies. This lack of evidence made pursuing this line of inquiry challenging. Another theory considered by investigators was that Charlene's planned car purchase was a ruse to lure her into a trap. The idea was that someone, possibly familiar with her intentions, orchestrated a scenario where she believed she was meeting to discuss a car sale, only to be ambushed and murdered. This theory suggested a level of premeditation and knowledge of Charlene's plans, indicating that the perpetrator had been monitoring her activities. Investigators scrutinized communications and arrangements related to the car purchase. They examined phone records, emails, and messages to identify any unusual interactions or contacts that could have been part of a setup. However, no evidence surfaced suggesting that Charlene had been in contact with anyone with ulterior motives. The lack of such evidence made it difficult to substantiate the theory of a planned setup. In the absence of definitive evidence supporting any of these theories, the investigation into Charlene Roseman's murder remains open. The case continues to be a source of anguish for her family, who are left with more questions than answers. Theories about robbery, personal conflict, and a planned setup offer potential explanations, but without concrete evidence, the true motive behind Charlene's death remains a mystery. The community hopes that new information will emerge, bringing clarity to this tragic case and justice to Charlene's memory. As the investigation into Charlene Roseman's death unfolded, there were aspects of her life and the case that remained largely unpublicized, adding layers of complexity to an already tragic story. Her sister, Rosalie Rosemond, provided rare and intimate insights into Charlene's personality and habits. As Rosalie described, Charlene was a deeply family-oriented young woman with big dreams of independence. She worked hard to make ends meet, and her decision to buy the Lexus symbolized her ambition and desire to build a better life for herself. According to Rosalie, Charlene wasn't someone who quickly opened up to others, but her family knew her well enough to understand the weight of her dreams and the effort she put into every aspect of her life. She wasn't caught up in the trivialities of daily drama. Instead, Charlene focused on her future. These details painted a picture of a woman full of potential whose life was snuffed out far too soon. Rosalie's memories of her sister revealed their strong bonds, making the loss all the more devastating. The location where Charlene's body was discovered raised eyebrows when investigators began to examine it more closely. Her father's Honda Civic was parked behind an apartment building in Union Square, Somerville. While the area was not particularly secluded, it did carry a certain eeriness, an almost forgotten corner of the city, far from where Charlene might have expected to be. It was a curious place for a car that seemed out of place amidst the nearby businesses and residential units. Moreover, the location was close to specific individuals with questionable ties to the area, people known for engaging in unsavory activities. Was this a coincidence, or was there a deeper connection to the location? Investigators would have to consider these surroundings and potential links to individuals who may have been aware of Charlene's movements. One of the most overlooked aspects of the case was the potential significance of the initial witness statements. Many assumed the lack of direct witnesses stymied the investigation, but closer scrutiny revealed that a few individuals had made brief but notable observations. One person reported seeing a man near the car that night, who appeared to be in a hurry and avoided eye contact when questioned. Could this man have been the one who orchestrated Charlene's final moments? Why had the witness failed to come forward sooner, and what did their hesitation indicate about the events leading up to Charlene's death? These questions lingered in the background, complicating the investigation and leaving the door open for new theories to emerge. While many of the details surrounding Charlene's death were widely known, it was these lesser publicized facts, the insights into her character, the mysterious location, and the potential significance of overlooked witnesses, that continued to puzzle investigators and fuel the lingering mystery. They provided glimmers of hope that, even years after her death, the truth could still be uncovered. Every overlooked detail, every scrap of information, was crucial to unlocking the secrets of that tragic night. In the years following Charlene Rosemond's tragic death, her family has remained steadfast in their pursuit of justice, determined to keep her memory alive and ensure that the circumstances of her death are not forgotten. They have actively engaged with the media, sharing Charlene's story through various platforms to raise public awareness and encourage potential witnesses to come forward. Their efforts have included participating in interviews, collaborating with investigative journalists, and utilizing social media to disseminate information about the case. Despite the passage of time, the Rosemond family continues to advocate for their loved one, embodying resilience and a relentless quest for truth. The family's appeals for information have been heartfelt and persistent. They have expressed their profound grief and the enduring pain of losing Charlene, emphasizing the impact of her death on their lives. Through public statements and community engagements, they have called upon anyone with knowledge of the events surrounding Charlene's death to come forward, underscoring the importance of justice and closure for their family. Their reflections on Charlene's life highlight her vibrant personality, aspirations, and tragically cut short bright future. These personal accounts serve as a poignant reminder of the individual behind the case, humanizing the tragedy and reinforcing the family's commitment to seeking justice. The murder of Charlene Rosemond sent shockwaves through the local community, leaving residents grappling with the reality of such a crime in their midst. The sense of safety and normalcy was disrupted, leading to increased discussions about crime, safety measures, and the need for vigilance. Community members expressed their shock and sorrow, coming together to support the Rosemond family and to demand answers. The case became a focal point for conversations about justice and the importance of community involvement in addressing crime. The community organized memorials and vigils to honor Charlene's memory in response to the tragedy. These gatherings provided a space for collective mourning and solidarity, allowing individuals to come together to remember Charlene and to express their support for her family. The events were marked by speeches, moments of silence, and sharing memories, reflecting Charlene's profound impact on those around her. The community's initiatives underscored a collective desire for justice and a commitment to ensuring that Charlene's death would not be in vain. Local organizations and residents have engaged in initiatives aimed at preventing similar tragedies. These efforts include community meetings, safety workshops, and collaborations with law enforcement to enhance neighborhood security. The community's response to Charlene's murder highlights a collective resilience and a shared commitment to justice, reflecting the enduring impact of her life and the tragedy of her untimely death. As of 2025, the case of Charlene Rosemond's tragic death remains unsolved. More than 15 years have passed since her body was discovered in the back seat of her father's car, and yet, the questions surrounding her murder still linger, unanswered. Despite the extensive investigation and public appeals, law enforcement has been unable to close the case, leaving her family and the community in constant uncertainty. While some leads emerged in the early stages, and specific individuals were questioned, the breakthrough that could bring closure to this heartbreaking story has yet to materialize. The passage of time has only deepened the sense of frustration and loss felt by Charlene's family, who continue to hold on to the hope that justice will eventually prevail. Each day that passes without resolution adds to the weight of their grief as they try to make sense of a tragedy that defies explanation. The investigation has seen its ups and downs, with potential suspects and motives being explored over the years. Yet, despite all the efforts, the case has not moved forward with any definitive answers. One key obstacle has been the lack of hard evidence tying any one individual to Charlene's death. Witnesses who could shed light on the events leading up to her murder have remained elusive, and the physical evidence at the crime scene has not provided the breakthrough needed. Investigators continue to analyze all available information, hoping to uncover a small clue that might finally unravel the mystery. But each day without new leads feels like a step further away from the truth. Theories have abounded over the years, with some speculating that Charlene's death was linked to a robbery gone wrong, while others believe that personal conflict may have played a role. However, without definitive proof, these theories remain just that, speculations. The absence of a clear suspect or motive has left law enforcement grappling with the complexities of the case. Was Charlene a random target, or was her murder the result of a more personal, calculated plan? Did someone close to her betray her trust, or was she in the wrong place at the wrong time? These questions continue to haunt investigators as they try to piece together the truth from fragments of information. For Charlene's family, the uncertainty is perhaps the most challenging part. The pain of losing a loved one in such a violent and inexplicable manner is made even worse by the knowledge that those responsible have not been brought to justice. Every day that passes without answers feels like another day spent in limbo with no resolution in sight. Charlene's family remains dedicated to finding out who is responsible for her death, but with each passing year, the likelihood of bringing the killer to justice seems to grow slimmer. As the years go on, the case of Charlene Rosemond's death remains one of the many mysteries that continue to haunt the community. The unanswered questions, the unfinished investigation, and the unresolved pain of her family all remain stark reminders of the tragedy. For now, all anyone can do is hope that, somehow, somewhere, a piece of information will come to light that will unlock the mystery of what happened to Charlene and bring justice to those who loved her.